Good. Why does that keep happening? No idea. Good morning. Try it again. Good morning. How the devil are you doing this Sunday? I'm going to fire straight over to Instagram and say good morning to Frank, all the way from Australia. Diacon Demo are in the house. Morning, Frank. How are you doing, my friend? Hope you're well. Loads and loads of stuff arrived. Let's have a look. Marky Mark Writing is here. Let me press Mark's button while I'm in that part of the world. Morning, Mark. Good of you to join us. Dan Cullen. Good morning, plant porn addicts and lovers alike. That's pretty much all of us, I would think. Chris Ford is here. Morning, my lovelies. May your hammer shaft stay straight. Of all the greetings I've ever heard, that one's probably the most disturbing. Morning, Chris. Thank you very much indeed for being here. Let me go back a little bit further. Gary Muirhead is in the house. We already know that Chris Ford is in the house. We already know that Andy Dalvet. Well, Andy Dalvet was actually here at 8:32. I don't know if he's back again. I mean, poor old Andy appears to have developed a bit of a stammer. Morning, morning, morning. It's Friday. Good morning, Andy Dalville. Hope you're fit and well, my friend. Good of you to join us. Yeah, another packed show. Morning monologue today, a little more ranty than yesterday's kind of fictional meandering. Not that I'm angry. Not angry at all. But just struck me. Dan Cullen saying, "Love the cap." Wow. Yeah. It's well. Speaking of caps, I tell you what. Let me turn my screen up just a little bit. Let's take that away. Yeah, there we are. There is a giveaway of a cap today. Probably the one that most people want, I would say. And user Esposito has just said, ciao back. I don't know what to say after that. But ciao. Frank at Dark on Demo says you should call it the afternoon dinner show for the Aussies. Listen, yeah. Well, good day and welcome to the dinner show. Doesn't have quite the same ring to it, does it? Let's have a look. Dan saying, well, flat out Friday. And as always, yeah, got to be honest, today I woke up, the alarm went off. And I'm normally awake before the alarm. The alarm went off this morning and I actually thought, well, first thing was, really? Is somebody winding me up? Is it really morning? And then my second thought was, do you think anyone would mind if I just rolled over and went back to sleep? I thought perhaps you might, so I decided to turn up. Martin Burnett over on Instagram as well. Is that the same Martin Burnett from Hughes and Salvage? If so, good morning to Hughes and Salvage and to Martin Burnett. Jim Turner is in the house. Morning, Jim. Andy Darville was here, went away, came back again. Good to have you here, Andy. I've already flagged up the fact that we do have a very, very smart baseball cap to give away today. I'm not going to tell you what it is quite yet. I'll let you worry about that in just a moment. And Ken Hatcher has arrived, which basically gives us permission to start the show. So, without further ado, let me take Ken off the screen just for a moment. Let me roll the intro. Post the question. Let me roll the intro. There is no question of the day, and let me get this show on the road. Muscle memory, force of habit. I've been saying that for so long, it just happens naturally. Here we go. I want to say good morning to Neil Bruce. So we've got Neil Bruce from New Zealand. We've got Frank from Diacon Demo in Australia. And we've got Gary Muirhead from Glasgow. Morning, Gary. Going home this weekend for a wee date night. Christine's a lucky lady and no mistake. A meal and the cinema to watch I Swear. I don't know what I Swear is. I feel like perhaps I should. I tell you what, though, I did before the show started this morning. I did watch a review of the new Frankenstein movie by Guillermo del Toro, who I'm a fan of. Pan's Labyrinth, one of my favourite movies. Yes, he's done a reimagining of the old Frankenstein story. quite fancy that. We've got a bit of a family gathering tomorrow, but I wonder if I might sneak off and watch that. Not sure it's really my my wife's cup of tea, but I might actually go and have a look at that. Dan Cullen saying, looking forward to the case cap. Looks a blinder. Well, Dan, I asked you to remind me of your postal address. You haven't. It's still sat here in its box. Remind me of your postal address, would you? Just to make sure I get the right one. Yeah, it is. It is Friday, the 17th of October. Friday. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition, the Lord High Chancellor of live streaming. In today's show, the LiuGong T Series of wheel loaders go global. Boliden embraces Komatsu autonomy, and we're taking a trip back to Kentucky to visit the Utility Expo stand of those fine folks at Takeuchi. Plus, in my morning monologue today, how did we get here? I'll explain when we get there. But yeah, I'm sure it will resonate with at least some of you. Now, before all of that, we do have a bit of a giveaway. Now, let me just remind those over on Instagram, you'll need to pop over to YouTube or Facebook or LinkedIn, or I won't see your entry. So go and do that. Best one, go to YouTube and just search for Demolition News 1. Demolition News 1. All one word. All, no, but never mind lowercase and uppercase. Demolition News 1, and you can take part in the competition. While you're popping over there, let me explain. I have here on my desk one of, if not the most desirable baseball caps in the entire construction equipment world. And it's that. Can you see that? Yes, it is. There you are. It's the John Deere cap, all the way from Louisville, Kentucky. There it is in all its glory. Now, I have up on my wall there, I have the old style, and I was half tempted to hang on to that, but I know just how popular the John Deere hats are, and that basically is up for grabs today. So how do you go about winning it? Yeah, it's quite easy, really. Just type Deere, 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 as in John Deere, into the chat. You have, let me see, what do you have? You have a minute to win it.
T-minus 1 minute. T-minus 50 seconds. T-minus 40 seconds. T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Got to admit, I was expecting more interest than that. There are 7. You have a 1 in 7 chance of winning today. Now, there's a bit of me, despite the fact that it's going to cost me money, there's a bit of me that would really be quite grateful if our friend Neil Bruce were to win it, because he has been in here for a lot and has won absolutely sod all so far. So my fingers are kind of crossed for Neil Bruce, but I'm going to do the draw right now. Let's see who has actually won that John Deere hat. Here we go. Well, Mark Whiting, you have yourself a John Deere hat. Congratulations, my friend. I'll say the same to you as I say to everybody. I will need your postal address. If you can let me have that in some way, shape, or form, just to make sure I've got the right one and I'm current and up to date. But Mark Whiting, this fine, splendid tag still attached hauled all the way from Louisville, Kentucky. There you are. It's the low profile version. It's the John Deere. Still has the cardboard liner in it. It hasn't been on my sweaty old noggin, I can promise you. Well done, Marky lad, says Dan Cullen. Well done, Mark, says Gary Muirhead. Well done, Mark, indeed. Yeah, fantastic news. Good luck to you. I hope you get many hours of pleasure. You get pleasure out of a hat. Maybe you do. I don't know. Marky Mark Whiting, congratulations. Right, let's crack on, shall we? Because I said I'm going to rant a bit later in the show. I'm going to rant in a moment, just as well. Let's start with this, shall we? I want to show you something, and I'll show it to you in a second because I want to give you some context. So, those of you that were here during the Neil Edwards days, when we used to have our finger right on the pulse of the UK construction industry, you'll know that for a period of about 5 years, the house building sector basically propped up the entire construction industry. They were regularly, or the house builders were regularly contributing somewhere between a third and a half of all construction contract awards, worth billions and billions and billions of pounds. Okay. Now, admittedly, they've like other sectors, they've been through some hard times as well. But is it just me, or is somebody basically taking the piss here? Let me show you something. And I'll put it on the screen so you can see it in a better way. There you are. I'm not sure that is a better way, but let me tell you exactly what it says. This is from the Housing Forum, and they are calling for a package of support ahead of the autumn budget. The government faces some tough fiscal choices. Nevertheless, spending on housing will support growth, reduce future costs, blah, de, blah, de, blah. The Housing Forum has published a review of the government's progress in its first year, roadmap to 1.5 million homes 1 year in. Sets out what the sector needs, blah, de, blah, de, blah. Okay. But what they are calling for, bearing in mind we are a matter of days away from the autumn statement, they are asking for funding for the social housing sector to ensure landlords can maintain and upgrade their existing homes alongside building new ones. But here's the bit that gets me, okay? They want financial support for the wider housing sector. The government should adequately and urgently resource the building safety regulator to unblock the backlog in new and existing buildings. The proposed changes to landfill tax, which could add around 25,000 to the cost, or £25,000 to the cost of building a new home on a brownfield site, needs rethinking. Changes are needed to the way that for-profit registered provider sector and build-to-rent sectors are taxed. Should support local authority house building. Support is needed for first-time buyers. Is it just me? They spent years absolutely coining it in, and now ahead of the budget, they're asking for financial support. Just one thing on that. They reckon that building a house on a former brownfield site could cost 25 grand in landfill tax. Really? Are you not recycling stuff? Are you not diverting stuff away from landfill? I don't think it would cost a demolition contractor that much. I think they would have that pretty much sorted. Just feels like a bit of a bailout to me. Let's have a look. Ken Hatcher saying Neil was a nice guy. Yeah, and he's completely left the industry, at least for now. Andy Dovell saying well done to Mark Whiting on winning the hat. They've given it all away to the shareholders. I wonder. Ken, I think you could well be right. I think you could well be right. Dan Cullen saying, well, that's no surprise there, to be honest. No, it's not. It's not. Let me just finish my tea. Bear with me 1 second. So, if I had a bit of a windfall, let's say I came into, I don't know, let's round figures. Let's just say I came into 100 grand. I wouldn't. I mean, kind of life-changing, not enough to retire on, obviously, but, 100 grand would be quite handy. If anyone's out there has got a spare 100 grand, please send it to me. I will use it wisely. But imagine I had 100,000 quid as a windfall, tax-free. I've just got a pile of cash here. And imagine I then spunked the lot. Do you think that if I dropped a line to Keir Starmer and all of his cohorts and said, well, I had 100 grand, but I've blown the bleeding lot, I'd like a bailout, what do you think I'd get in return? Not a great deal, I would guess. Imagine individual companies, and I'm thinking more at SME level here, which is 3/4 of the UK construction and demolition industry is made up of SMEs. Imagine, they've had a couple of years where they've been going great guns. They're really doing lots and lots of work. They've made lots of money, lots of profit. The family behind the company are happy. Their employees are happy. Yeah, and then things take a turn for the worse. And you, as a small company, pop along to your local MP and say, well, we had a really good time for about 5 years. Really good time. Oh man alive, you should have seen the cash flowing through this place. But it's stopped and we'd like some money now, please. I reckon the answer would be roughly 2 words, and the second one would likely be off. And yet, the house building sector, which has earned tens, if not hundreds of billions over the past decade or so, slight downturn, slight sign of a downturn and the threat of more costs as a result of the autumn budget, and all of a sudden they want a bailout of some description. And just one other thing, bearing in mind, they're calling for some sort of financial assistance while they're standing on the brink of a 1.5 million new home windfall. Somebody said the other day, I can't remember, it may have been Mick Norton, I'm fairly sure he said that a new home on average will net a profit of about 63,000 quid. I won't do the maths, but 1.5 million times 63,000 is a shit ton of money. And they have the temerity to ask for a handout. Listen, I admire their cheek. I admire their nerve. Not sure about admiring the actual context of it. Good morning to Blockade Demolition, who've just joined us over on Instagram. Good to see you here, fellas. Dan Cullen says, Zealand, the shareholders take the majority as they need their cut of profit. Not sure what Zealand is. I wonder what the government wants sometimes. They ask for more houses, then put every obstacle in your way they can. Yeah. And in this instance, they didn't actually need to put obstacles in the way. The obstacles already existed. What they didn't do was have the foresight to go along and say, need more people, need better sewage. We need some joined up thinking. They basically... We've got to the point now, I think, in politics where political parties seem to pin all their hopes on just one thing. Tail end of the Conservative government, we will stop the small boats, which, if you're very, very anti-small boat, maybe we'll get your vote. But if you're not really that bothered, if you're running a small business and actually you quite like the idea of migrant labour, then maybe not so much. I will say the same about the Labour Party. They've basically pinned their entire government, their entire reputation on delivering 1.5 million new homes, which anyone in the industry knows they're not going to do. So when the 5 years is up and we all look back and say, well, they said they were going to do 1.5 million. We were doing about 250, 275,000 before. We've done exactly the same now as they said, as they promised. We've done exactly the same now as before they offered or promised to do 1.5 million new homes. Clearly a failure. Well, let's vote for somebody else then. Seems very, very strange. Very, very strange. Andy Thornton has just joined us. Andy, good of you to join us. Unfortunately, at 10:20 in the morning, you have missed all the free money. You've missed the dancing girls, the nudity, the drug taking. It's all gone on, and you've missed all of it. but welcome. Good of you to join us. Let's crack on, shall we? Because we've got stuff to get through. We're going to go Caterpillar first, and then we're off around the world with Luke. Very quickly, I just touched on the subject of politics and stuff, and bearing in mind, regardless of what side of the house the politicians sit on, I do get the feeling that we are, to a degree, we're either beholden to or we're following the playbook of Mr. Trump. Reading an article last night, there is planned a protest in America this weekend. The No Kings. America don't like kings, and Donald Trump fancies himself as one. So there's a No Kings protest planned for this weekend. They're expecting upwards of 5 million people to take part across the country. Here's the thing. Somebody published an article yesterday advising on how to ensure that you're not tracked via your phone or your smartwatch or anything like that, because of fear of repercussions, retribution for taking part in the protest. Land of the free, home of the brave, every likelihood that the government will track you and quite possibly come after you afterwards. And we're borrowing from that playbook. We are. I'm going to go over very quickly to Garvin. Morning, Garvin, over on Mostly Diggers at Instagram. Do Cat make much of their own demolition attachments, or are they licensed from attachment manufacturers? Bit of both. I can tell you that their drum cutters are, in fact, a Cymex out of Italy, but some of their stuff, bearing in mind they bought, must be going back, Christ, how long are we going back? Probably 25 years, maybe a bit less than that, 25 years. They bought the Dutch attachment manufacturer Varacto, who were already one of the world's best attachments manufacturers, based down in Sertogenbosch, down in Holland, in the Netherlands. That is still the home of the Cat attachment business. So yes, they do make a lot of their own, but they do license a few as well. Next time you're near a Cat attachment, scratch the paint, see what color it is underneath. With the drum cutters, you scratch away the black, you might find a bit of white under there for Cymex. What do we have there? Maximum uptime. That's a rarely used term. Yeah, well, minimum downtime seems a bit, I don't know, it's more passive, whereas maximum uptime. Oh, maximum uptime sounds a bit more butch and manly, doesn't it? Just me? I don't know. Anyway, we showed you a while back the newly introduced LiuGong T Series wheel loaders. Well, they've gone down great guns, not just here, but everywhere around the world. And LiuGong has celebrated that with a brand new video that shows just how popular they are globally. Yes, it's smart looking equipment there. Just one thing that I picked up on there. One of those applications, I think it was in Thailand, was a rice yard. I know we don't. I'm fairly sure we don't have rice yards here in the UK. If you have a rice yard and you've got your rice out in the open, which is exactly what was the case was there, and you have a heavy downpour of rain, do you now have twice as much? I cook rice from time to time. I know how it works. Does it swell? Is it outdoors because if you put it indoors and it gets wet, it might just blow the walls out? If anyone knows, I'd love to hear from you. Nice, but that dust must be a pain on filters. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. What else have we got? Oh, I know what we've got. We're going autonomous with Komatsu in a moment. After this.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Yeah, we've talked about Komatsu's autonomous mining systems in the past, most notably after our trip to Las Vegas and the Mine Expo show last year. But that equipment is now out in the wild. It's doing its thing, including with the fine folks at Boliden. Sit back and enjoy.
The future of the mine, as we have talked about, I think it's electrification, probably battery, and the other thing is automation. That's the two parts that we see for the future. We implemented the AHS system at the same time as we started the new mine, LiuGong. It's a satellite pit, so to say. And it's very important to increase the productivity and to increase the safety in the mine. So we think that's the way forward, and we're looking at how to expand it to the rest of the mine, because this is just the start. But to get the full flexibility and full efficiency, we need to increase it to the rest of the mine as well. With the autonomous trucks, we have a more even process, even flow in the production system, and that's very good. And of course, we think that we will decrease the injuries because we have no drivers on the trucks. So as far as we can see in Aitik, it's just positive for us to use the AHS system. At the time we have 12 trucks running in LiuGong every day, and we have in total 17 trucks available if we need.
The front-runner system in Aitik and the deployment of AHS the past year is very important from many perspectives, such as productivity and safety. It's also very crucial from an electrification standpoint, because we don't see that it's feasible having battery trucks running 24/7 and managing the energy and the state of charge at the batteries. It will be extremely complex to manage an entire mine with all different kind of holding systems and weather situations and unplanned events happening. So that's why we see that AHS is very important first step in order to enable the electrified mine. I would strongly recommend that when a miner starts looking on creating the future mine in terms of safety, productivity and sustainability, you start with AHS, because that is the enabler for electrification later on.
Looks an amazing place, right? I'm going to go back to the chat because we've obviously autonomous trucks. Mick Norton says, what about the prospect of autonomous London taxis? Good point. It's a good point. There's a bit of me that would quite appreciate the peace and quiet rather than having somebody shouting over their shoulder about who they had in their taxi, about football and stuff like that. I'd much prefer a bit of peace and quiet. In fact, when I go to, when we were in the States last week, when you order your Lyft, Lyft, or Uber, you can actually specify, shut up, leave me alone. I don't want to know your life story. So you can do all that. However, don't know if anybody else saw this. There is a system in America, or in some cities in America. I think San Francisco got the rollout, but I think it's now spread across the states, called Waymo, Waymo, which is driverless taxis. If I'd have stumbled across one in Louisville, I would definitely take one for a spin just to say that I had. However, there's a bit of a protest because the Americans are starting to relish the notion of protesting, not quite to the same degree as the French, but they're getting into it. Somebody somewhere a little while ago decided to upset the whole apple cart of Waymo, and they ordered 50 Waymos to the same place in a cul-de-sac at the same time. And all 50 cars arrived and blocked each other in. Chaos ensued. Yeah. So we've got that to look forward to. That'll be fun. I've got to be honest, I'd much rather, if you can have driverless vehicles on the road, I'd much rather they were doing the whole not Uber, the whole Amazon delivery thing. We've got two Amazon drivers that seem to serve us on a regular basis. One plays his music at roughly Mach 10 volume. He would drown out a jumbo jet. Could do without that. And the other one, it was a nice enough fella, but because I've spoken to him now, we're buddies. And rather than here's your parcel, cheers, we now have a 10-minute conversation. If we could make that autonomous, I wouldn't mind so much. Mark Fitz just joined us over on Instagram, just in time to join me on a trip back to Louisville in Kentucky after this.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
I'll warn you in advance. It's not a big deal. It's a big deal to me. You may not even notice, which is probably stupid of me to point it out. When I recorded this in an exhibition hall. What we tend to do when we've recorded in a fairly noisy place is we run the audio through a filter that takes out a lot of the background noise so that my voice can be heard. For some reason, this one kind of left a few legacy pops and things. There's only one or two, but don't worry, it's not your system, it is mine. I don't know why it decided to hang on to these bits and pieces, but this is my tour of the Takeuchi stand at the Utility Expo 2025.
We're at Utility Expo, and behind me is the Takeuchi stand. We're going to take a look around.
Crazy.
That's the Takeuchi TL12 V2 with the high flow. Really rugged looking machine. Over into mini excavator territory. A lot of familiar looking machines, sizes and models. Big wheeled excavator there, the TB 395W.
Or easier to.
I have to say, these Takeuchi machines are really well turned out. The company's also showing off a brand new slogan, which, if you watch the Breakfast show with any regularity, you'll know that everyone claims that Takeuchi machines are incredibly reliable, incredibly rugged. And I'll take you around here and actually show you what that new marketing slogan is. And I have to say, it does actually make perfect sense. Let's swing around here, there it is. Takeuchi, the mark of toughness.
Oh, I like these. Yeah. Yeah. Easy.
And that's Takeuchi.
Yeah, don't know what went on with the sound there, but as Dan Cullen said, some nice Takeuchis there. Yeah, I have to say, really, really smartly turned out. I mean, it's an exhibition. All of the machines were well turned out, but those in particular, they really did stand out. Chris Ford says, I'm impressed that an Amazon driver can talk about diggers for 10 minutes. You do know I can talk about other stuff, right? Not much, and not from any reliable standpoint, but I can talk about other stuff as well. I could do you half an hour on fishing and my inability to actually do it. I could do that if you like. Don't think anyone would want to listen to that. Anyway, that's about it for the main part of this morning's show. I'm going to quickly remind Mark Whiting to send me his postal address so I can get his John Deere hat off to him. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into my morning monologue. If you can't stick around for that, please stay safe. Not just today, but tomorrow and Sunday, and then come back on Monday as well. Hope to see you again very, very soon. But if you do have the time and the inclination, I shall return with my morning monologue immediately after the thing I'm about to play. Jim Turner says, Mark, you have two very different styles of broadcasting. Your podcast mode is massively different to your show self. Yes, it is. It is. Do you know, it's a funny one. As far as I'm concerned, I'm just me. But I think when I do recorded stuff, for some reason, I kind of concentrate harder, and I don't know why that is. I mean, I think having done, what is it now, 1,018 of these shows, I think I'm kind of relaxed into it, and I feel like I'm chatting to my mates. When I'm doing a podcast, when I've actually got a script in front of me, I feel like I'm under pressure, like I'm, I don't know, doing a recording for an advertising agency or something like that, and I tend to work a little bit harder at it. Don't know why that is. But you're probably right, Jim. You are probably right. Anyway, people, morning monologue time, and I shall do this. I don't know. I'll do it in the first style that comes up. Jim Turner says, voice, body language, and everything is different. It's my body double. I was hoping nobody was going to notice, but no, it's not. I'll be back after this. How did we get here? Hauling ourselves out of bed at 4:30 in the morning to beat the traffic and get to site. Because the industry, in its planning arrogance, chose to treat commuting misery as a non-issue. Because contractors, clients, site managers, and local authorities never built into schedules the chaos of rush hour and congestion. We nodded along, accepted the early starts, swallowed the long drive, and turned fatigue into normality. How did we get here? Forced into self-employment, labelled as independent contractors, stripped of workers' rights. Also firms can dodge payroll, pensions, holiday pay, and sick pay. Because somewhere along the line, the narrative was hijacked. Flexibility became a one-sided sword. Rather than a genuine freedom, it functions as a mechanism to shift risk and cost onto individual workers. In 2025, over a third of the UK construction workforce is self-employed. That didn't happen by accident. That happened by design. Now you pay your own tax, your own insurances. You cope with financial gaps, chase payments. You've got no safety net at all. All because the industry wanted you off the books, but constantly on call. How did we get here? Your phone is a leash. You answer at 7 o'clock on a Sunday evening. Site issue, urgent, can you sort it? Because communication tech is cheap, reliable, instant, and someone decided always on serves productivity. So now your time is no longer your time. You lose rest, downtime, separation. You take responsibility home. And we accepted that erosion of boundary as just how things are. How did we get here? Our every motion tracked, every machine monitored, every worker ID swipe logged, CCTV cameras watching, telematics reporting every minute of machine idle time or movement. Because surveillance was sold as safety and accountability. but it's fast becoming control first and suspicion second. We turned work sites into panopticons. Every break, every detour, every hesitation recorded. We accepted this creep by consent under the banner of compliance. How did we get here? Being forced to prove competence in tasks you already perform each and every day, to get certificates, refresher tests, cards, audits, even though you've been doing those tasks for years. Because compliance culture took over. Certification regimes became gatekeepers rather than enablers. You pay, you sit tests, you prove yourself just to keep doing your job. Experience gets ignored until it's on paper. How did we get here? Training by people who've never worked a day on site in their life. Classroom trainers that read slides, tick checklists, quote rules, but who have never been in the trenches, have never experienced the struggles, the stresses, and the challenges. The gap between training and reality is wide and it's growing. Yet we treat curriculum compliance as equal to lived competence. We accepted it because the system demands standardization, and real site experience is messy, undocumented, and sidelined. How did we get here? Reporting to a middle manager fresh from college or a diploma, armed with spreadsheets, KPIs, but with zero boots on the ground experience, zero practical scars. Because hierarchy was built around cost and control, not wisdom and merit. We assumed management skills are teachable anywhere, and we sidelined the field veteran. You, with your decades of know-how, now take orders from someone who couldn't do your job if their life depended on it. And you swallow it because you need the job. How did we get here? Process overload, performance reviews, audits, safety checklists, toolbox talks, quality rounds, performative nonsense in the place of real improvement. Performative nonsense in place of real improvement. Compliance theatre became the default substitute for actual vigilance. Hours spent filling forms and checklists, all while corners are still being cut and hazards persist. We've confused documentation with execution, and we accepted that circus because liability demanded a paper trail. How did we get here? Wearing 10 hats at once: operator, foreman, trainer, problem solver, site liaison, subcontract coordinator, logistics fixer, planner. All without extra pay, all without extra support or clarity. Because efficiency culture demanded lean staffing. We have competence cards that permit us to do one specific task, yet in reality, we're juggling dozens. How did we get here? When things go wrong, you take the fall, you carry the can, you fix the mistake, explain the failure, you absorb liability. Yet many of the real decisions, budgets, sequencing, design, procurement, risk, were made upstream by people who never even visit the site. We allowed the shift of blame downwards. We normalized workers acting as the cleanup crew for managerial incompetence. How did we get here? An industry so demanding that we have hundreds of workers each year killing themselves just to escape. Workers who can no longer take the stress, the pressure, the abuse, the hassle, the constant threat of unemployment and financial ruin. How did we get here? We stopped asking why. We stopped resisting. We accepted the absurd and the unreasonable, and we rationalized it. You can look across sites, across contractors, across trades, and assume this is how things must be done. When did questioning go out of fashion? When did complicity become virtue? How did we get here? I'll tell you. As an industry, as a workforce, and as individuals, we rolled over. We surrendered. Employers had us by the balls, and when they squeezed, we caved. It was a small surrender at first, a bit more responsibility with no more pay, but it escalated. We allowed it to. We allowed our rights to be eroded. We complied with each new change, each new shift in employment terms. They'll tell you that you're an asset, that your contribution is vital, but ultimately, You're just a number on a spreadsheet, nameless and expendable. That's how we got here. There you are. A nice cheery one for a Friday. What is the chat saying? What is the chat saying? Dan Cullen says, has LC International got back to you? Not as such. They did follow me over on Instagram. Oh, not on Instagram. They followed me over on LinkedIn yesterday. And I must admit, when I saw that, I thought, that's the precursor to an email to say, come on down. Dan Cullen, come on down. It hasn't been yet. Oil Quick UK just joined us over on Instagram, by the way. If that's Steve, morning, Steve. How are you doing? If it's not, say hello to Steve for me. Oil Quick UK. Good of you to be here. Wonder how you're going to get on if you have to work in Cardiff. Extra charge for parking for large vehicles. You can bet your bottom dollar that other councils would jump on the bandwagon. Look at the situation we've got with the what do they call it? Basically, the toll to enter London now. Oh, it's ridiculous. I mean, I think we're up to about 15 quid now. I must admit I don't do it, so I don't know. I'm completely out of touch. But there is a congestion charge which has gone up and up and up. It's never going to go down. It really isn't. But as I say, if I'm going into London, I get on the train because there's a train station like a 3-minute walk away from here. Why would I take the car? But yeah, and for London, read Birmingham, Manchester, Leeds, all the same. I've recounted this story before, but I will remind you of it because it does still blow my mind. I had to go to Norway a decade or so ago to report on some drilling rigs out on a kind of remote island. So I went to Oslo and then took the ferry out. The ferry took about hour and 10 minutes. And you just arrive. There's no booking. You just pitch up, you stroll onto the ferry, and then at some point somebody comes around and takes your payment. As I say, my ferry crossing was about hour and 10 minutes, maybe 65, 70 minutes. And the cost of that, €2. At the time, it's about £1.50. And, being the honest guy that I am and being the stranger in town, I went, what? €2? Have I missed something here? And he said, well, why would we charge people to go to work? And yet here, that's exactly what we do. We don't just do it once; we do it multiple times. We charge you in a roundabout way. Either you as an individual or your company. We will charge you to sit an exam or a test, to earn a card, to prove that you can do that which you claim you can do. And we will then charge you again to update that this year, 5 years' time, but we will charge you again. And we will charge you each and every time. If you take your car, you're paying through the nose on road tax, on insurance, on fuel. We will charge you to go across certain bridges, through certain tunnels. We will charge you to go into city centres. I wish Peter McKenna was here because I'm sure he's got a better handle on this than I have. I wonder how much it costs to actually go to work if you're required to use Britain's roads these days, as a national average. I mean, my commute is I walk down 13 steps and that's me done. But if you're travelling any kind of distance, we were talking the other day about people living in Yorkshire but working in London. I'm sure they're doing it by train. But if you're driving an hour there and an hour back every day, and maybe your journey takes in the Dartford crossing, for example, how much of your wages, your hard-earned cash, is just going straight back into either the government or a private company just to allow you to go to work? I wonder. There may be something about that online. I'll have a look. We're skilled and trained people. We have to prove our competence every few years to be allowed to carry on. Do doctors and nurses have to do the same? Same with drug and alcohol testing? No, they don't. And please, Jim, that is such a good example It's not the example I normally use, but I think that one, I often compare this to those that are driving on the road. I took my driving test in 1987, I think. So 1987, which is very, very simple maths, like 50 years ago, thereabouts. No, it's not. It's 40 years ago, 45 years ago, whatever. I've driven hundreds of thousands, if not millions of miles here and overseas, had a prang or two along the way, had a speeding fine or two along the way, got nicked once for driving with a mobile phone in my hand, but I've never had to redo that. 60 years old I am now, and I was 22 when I did that, so 48 years ago, and I've never had to resit it. Someone up there has just decided he seems okay, we'll let him carry on. But that one I think is even more vital. You've got doctors now. Admittedly, if you want to become a doctor, what is the study time for a doctor now, or a surgeon? 8 years, something like that. So you've got somebody who may well crack open your rib cage and have a bit of a prod around your heart or something, or have a prod around inside your head. You've got nurses administering drugs, basically saving your life. And we ask them to prove they can do it once at the very beginning of their career. And unless they take a very sharp left turn in that career path, they go from the cardiovascular part over here to the neuroscience part over here. So they've gone from heart to brain. Unless they do that, there's no requirement for them to prove that they can do what they say they can do. And yet here, in demolition construction, where cards are a money-making scheme, we are required to prove annually, or every 5 years, or every 3 years, that we can do what we say we can do. Anybody else think that smells a bit fishy? They would put more lives at risk than us? Yeah. We are quite happy to ourselves and our loved ones. If something, God forbid, something were to happen to my wife or one of my kids, I would take them to the doctor, or more specifically the hospital, and I would hand responsibility for their well-being, their welfare, and possibly their life to a doctor who may have learned to be a doctor 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 30 years ago. But he's got the white coat on, he's got a stethoscope around his neck, and I'm kind of content that he's got the requisite skills to fix my wife or my child. I'm happy to accept that. Construction worker driving an excavator. Can you do that? Yes, I can. Well, show me your card. Okay. And then in 5 years' time, show me another card, because that one's out of date. And then 5 years after that, show me another card, because that one's out of date. I always say the same thing at this point. Are the powers that be genuinely thinking that sometime between now and the refreshing of your card, that all of that information, all of that gathered knowledge, all of that experience is just going to seep out of your ear hole and be lost? Has anyone ever gone back to do a refresher course on one of their competence cards and walked in there and went, I'm here to do my refresher card, because between when I did my last one and now, I've forgotten everything. I don't remember how to do it. It's all gone. It's all gone pear-shaped. I don't know what I'm doing. Has anyone ever I don't know where that voice came from. Has anyone ever done that? Smells of rotten fish, yeah. And going back to the monologue, how did we get here? We got here because, we got here by design. There are greater powers at work here, and I'm not talking conspiracy theory here. I'm just talking about, we've been bent over a table and shafted in a big way, which, I do blame those that did the shafting for 95% of it. But 5%, I do wonder if we just allowed ourselves to be treated that way. Now, it's easy for me to sit here and list all those things which have become problems and issues and challenges over a course of decades. And I think that's one of the problems we've got. I think there's been like a creep. We'll expect you to do more hours, but for the same pay. We'll expect, somebody goes off sick, you'll fill in for them. Nothing more on that. In addition to your full-time job, we've got an apprentice coming on. Take him under your wing, show him the ropes, which I'm sure most people would be happy to do. But it's an additional job, it's an additional responsibility, but there's no extra pay in that. And we've accepted that. And then things like monitoring. I can sit here with one hat on and think, the whole notion of telematics is a good thing. If you can cut down on downtime because you can see faults developing before they become a problem, I think that's a great thing. I think it will also improve over a course of years. It will improve manufacturing of equipment because they will have a better understanding of true life cycles and true operating rather than ivory tower guesses. I think that's all fantastic. But the operators themselves are also being monitored. Now, we've got a situation here in the UK where Keir Starmer has proposed the introduction of a national ID card. Now, I don't have a problem with it. I'd have one because, I've got no skeletons in my closet. I don't care if anyone tracks me. They're tracking me anyway because I carry one of those and I'll wear one of those. I don't give a monkeys about that. But as a nation, we're kind of up in arms about that. Oh, being constantly monitored. How dare they? You work on a UK demolition or construction site. You've already done that. You're already been done. That's all. That's in the past now. That's all over and done with. You've got sites in London where you go through a retina scan. You've got some that are fingerprint controlled, but you've also got CCTV up the wazoo. You've got telematics monitoring. A lot of machines now have got cameras in the cabs, which are purportedly there to keep an eye on you, make sure you're not nodding off at the levers, but are also monitoring your behaviour. You've got reports going back up the line to the manufacturer. I have less of a problem there, but also to the owner of that machine. Oh, you got to keep an eye on Chris. He's just up the revs again. He's burning fuel like it's going out of fashion. Never mind the fact that Chris knows precisely what he's doing. He knows exactly what application he's in. He knows the application demands in that particular, hard rock or heavy clay or whatever it might be, and he has responded accordingly. But you are being monitored. As a private individual, the idea of monitoring is anathema to all of us. No, we don't want to be monitored. If you work in demolition and construction, you're being monitored right here, right now. Truth be told, there's probably somebody in the hierarchy, at least one of your companies, thinking, what's he looking at? 10 o'clock every morning, he seems to slow down a bit. We need to have a word with him about that. Yeah, Dan Cullen says the Dartford Crossing nets around 200 million a year, give or take. And bearing in mind, I was going to say I was involved in the construction. I wasn't, but I reported on the construction because I'm that old. When that was originally done, when that Dartford Bridge was built, it was done as a PFI, private finance initiative. And the whole idea was that I can't remember who actually built it. It was a joint venture, I think. But the joint venture basically did it not at cost, but they did it at a lower cost on the basis that they would collect tolls for a period to offset that cost. That's more than 30 years ago. If they're taking 200 million a year, which actually seems a bit low to me, because it's always jam-packed, but if they're taking 200 million a year, how many times over have we now paid for that bridge? Jim Turner, the powers that be aren't capable of thinking. Or are they? Or are they? When you think about all of those things that I listed in that morning monologue, all of that has come about not by accident. Not by accident. That has been foisted upon us while we weren't paying attention. If you were a conspiracy theorist, you could track it all back and say, "Oh, okay, I can see what they're doing there. I can see exactly what they're doing there." Mark Whiting says, a nightmare to renew my CPCS card to spec this time with MVQ interviews and touchscreen tests. Yeah. All to prove that you can do the very thing that you're currently doing. Gary Muirhead is on his way out the door. Excuse me. Have a fantastic weekend, guys. More specifically, Gary, you have a good weekend. Have a fantastic weekend. Enjoy your date night. And let me know what I swear is all about, because I don't know. But enjoy yourself. Wonder what the outcry would be if you asked everyone to do a test every 5 years. I mean, there'd be protests in the street. You know, if you went back, I don't know how many people have a driver's license in the UK. What are we up to about now? About 80 million? Let's say that, well, let's just say half of them. It's probably more than that, but let's say 40 million people. And we said, you now have to sit at your cost a new driving test every 5 years. There'd be outcry. Absolute outcry. Demolition construction, where there's 3 million people, nah, that's fine. Yeah. Jim Turner says it's gradual decline and no one has enough backbone to say they were wrong and tear the system down and start again. Yeah. I've said this before. It's a bit like let me state in advance, I don't know any women like this. But imagine you're a woman and you put your makeup on. You're looking very pretty and very attractive, and you go out for the night and you wake up the following morning and maybe your makeup isn't looking quite so good now. Now, you could take it off and start again, but a bit pressed for time. So just put some more on top. The following day, the same thing happens again. Sooner or later, you're going to end up with a really unattractive head that's about that big because of layers and layers and layers of makeup. That is precisely what we've done with regulations and rules and guidances and everything else in this industry. We've just layered and layered and layered to the point now where we have to actually employ, independent consultants to wade through all of that stuff to allow us to do our job. At the point where those that do the job for a living can't actually understand what they're required to do, you've taken a wrong turn somewhere, haven't you? Chris Ford said, had to do a refresher course for my CPC, transport manager. My driver CPC is currently out of date. Not had the time to spend in the classroom as there's too many demands on my time recently. Yeah. Yeah. Just think about that. Think about that just for 1 second. Chris is so busy doing his job, being trusted to do his job, but doing his job. He is so busy doing his job that he can't find time to prove that he can do the job that has kept him busy. Please, someone make that make sense. His employer trusts him to the degree where he is absolutely flat out, and so flat out he can't go away for a day or more to prove that he can. That makes no sense at all. None whatsoever. Jim Turner says, digital ID is just the first rung on the ladder to total government control. If they were actually bothered about fixing the country, they'd have physical ID cards and a national DNA database. Yeah. I mean, the DNA database, bearing in mind the day and age that we live in, just sort it out at birth. Just take a DNA sample at birth. You're doing blood tests anyway. You've got the fluids. Log it. You might not need it for another 20 years until that beautiful newborn bouncing baby goes off and commits mass murder. But when he does, and it's probably a bloke, when he does, you'll be able to find him because you took the time. Wasn't that once it paid off, it was going to be free? If I remember correctly, yes, it was. That was a Dartford Bridge. It was going to be free. It was just open-ended. We've got exactly the same situation, funnily enough, with the building of, I can't remember which of our power stations it is. Was it Sizewell? one of the power stations where we've basically got the Chinese involved, and the Chinese have said, yes, we'll build that at cost and everything else, but we'll charge you for the electricity afterwards. And the last I heard, we had no fixed price on that electricity, and there was no actual cap on how long they would be charging for. Yeah. Let's have a look. Jim Turner, they're not thinking, they're just taxing. Well, yeah, that's certainly true. There's a saying used by management: a bonus one month is a God-given right the next. Unfortunately, that's a two-way street. If you don't complain, then it's always expected from that day on. Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. My youngest daughter works. She walks to work. She walks about 4 minutes to work. And she works for an electrical contractor. So she takes care of all the engineers going out to fix electrics in pubs and restaurants and hotels and stuff like that. When she got the job, her hours were 8:30 to 5. She gets a bit of time off for lunch, and the people that she works with, they treat her pretty well. There's not a Christmas bonus, but they have a bit of a Christmas party every once in a while. The boss will come in and he's bought them all lunch or whatever it might be. So not too bad. But her 8:30 start kind of evolved to become an 8:15. Actually, 8 would be better. Actually, if you could be in by 7:30, now her wages haven't increased. In addition to that, the powers that be in her company, it's not a very big company, but the powers that be in her company now know that she lives only 4 minutes away from the office. So if an engineer over the weekend needs a part for an early morning start on a Monday, she gets the phone call, sometimes like 8 o'clock on a Sunday evening. Can you pop down to the office now? Open up so that Bob the engineer can pop in and grab the bit that he needs for tomorrow morning. And off she trots. And the first time it happened, it's only 4 minutes down the road. It's not a big deal. I was going down there anyway to get myself a Mars bar. Now it's the norm. Precisely as Andy has said. Dan Carlin saying, enjoy your weekend. See you on the flip side on Monday, lads, for more of the same. Stay safe, look after yourself and your family. Yeah, do that. Please do that. Yes, Andy, you're spot on. Those that don't stand up for themselves get leaned on. Yeah, they do. My CPCS card is up for renewal, says Chris. I've been pulling levers since I was 12 years old. Every day is a school day due to the ever-changing methods and nature of the job. But listen, again, I am repeating myself because I say this every once in a while. If by some miracle all of that accumulated knowledge that Chris has got in his noggin had fallen out, dripped out of his ear when he wasn't paying attention, his employer would have been the first person to spot it. Chris used to be a good operator, but look how slow he is. It's like he doesn't know what he's doing. But they don't do that. In actual fact, they've given him enough trust and enough work to make him so busy he can't go and do a replacement card. And yet, he still has to go and get a replacement card. Jim says, that's why I always voice my opinion so everyone knows where they stand. Yeah. If we had 2.5 million Jim Turners, maybe the industry would look a bit different. But we don't. We don't. And unfortunately, and again, going back to that notion of pushing people into self-employment, and when you look at it from a financial point of view, from a strategic point of view from the employer, it makes perfect sense. Do I really want to be paying sick pay? Do I really want to be paying holiday pay? No. Do I want to pay when they're on maternity leave or paternity leave? No, I don't want to be doing that. So you can understand why they've done that. But we've basically surrendered the last lever that we had. When you were in employment, there were rules and regulations that had to be abided by, both by you and by the employer. And if they changed the rules or the terms of your employment, that would have to be negotiated either directly or via a union back in the day. Now, if you're off the books, take it or leave it. Don't like the rules? piss off then. We'll get somebody that will. And you know full well there is always someone out there that will accept the crap, accept the lower wages, accept the grief. The industry made workers expendable, and the workers themselves accepted that. Gradually and slowly, but accepted that. Dan kind of says, does anything make sense what they do in Parliament? No. None whatsoever. And apparently it is Sizewell where the Chinese are involved, because it looks like everything they can think of to stop us, the working man actually making money and saving money. Yeah. Andy Thornton says, every 5 years, doctors must revalidate with the General Medical Council. That's not quite the same as having to reprove. You can do that which you've already done, right? I don't know exactly what that revalidation is, but my guess is they're not going back to a classroom. A classroom in which stood at the front is somebody that's never actually done the job. I'm guessing that's not the case. Dan Collins says every few years they raise the pension age. Yeah. To the point where I don't even know what the pension age is. Not that I mean, I'm 60 now. I'm not in any great hurry to go and hang up my boots. I don't really wear boots that often, but I'm in no hurry for that. But I'm at the point now. Is it 70 now for a bloke? Is that the retirement age now? Though, who made up 5 years for your card renewal? Somebody with a vested interest would be my guess. Don't take this wrong, as I'm not calling her a mug. Your daughter will be treated like a mug by her employer until she either speaks up or leaves. Yeah. Now, I mean, it's a slightly different. And listen, you didn't need to explain that. And I agree. I do think she's being taken for a mug. She's in direct employment, so her situation is a little bit different. But the employer in her instance has a bit of a trump card. She could, I mean, she's been working with this company for 5 years, I think. Now, she could take her experience and her knowledge and go and move to a different company. But where we live in Stoneleigh, that company is probably the only one that needs her skills. If she actually wanted to, if she had a fit of pique one afternoon and said, "Oh, sod this, you're taking the piss, I'm off." Chances are she's now a train journey away from her employer, which means that either she gets another 1,500 quid a year to cover her travel costs, or she just has to keep taking it on the chin. It's not right. It's not right at all. But that's the reality. Chris Ford says, I only run a small business. There's normally less than 10 people. I do an 8 to 12-hour shift on site. Then the paperwork when I've done, we've moved over, is that 100,000 cube of muck and processed and crushed 50,000 tons. Not messing about. Jim Turner says, she needs to tell them what they need to give her to make her happy with the extra work or stop doing it. As I say, if she were to do that, they'd find someone else that would. My eldest son is the one, he's gone through the corporate ladder. He started out tossing burgers and flipping burgers at McDonald's, but he's worked his way up through the system with the David Lloyd leisure clubs. Started out as just a bit of a gopher, and then became something else, and then became something else, and he's now, what is he, general manager at one of the clubs now. But he too is expendable. He's had a few bits and pieces that he hasn't been particularly happy with in the past year or so, and he's taken it to his bosses and said, this is not right. All right. They won't offer him more money to cover the inconvenience. They won't offer him, another career move to raise his income or anything like that. Fine. Don't like it, piss off. Plenty of people that would be more than happy to do your job. You won't get your pension until you're 67. I got mine at 66. Is that a matter of timing, or do you have an inside track, Chris? I'm sure it's a matter of timing. Anyway, people, having ranted endlessly for the last half an hour, I'm going to let you go and do your business, because we wouldn't want your employer to get all upset and remember just how expendable you are. Yeah. I'll be back here again on Monday morning for yet more of the same. Until then, everybody, look after yourself. Please look after yourself. Also, look after your friends, your family, your colleagues, anybody else that you know as well. Hope to see you all again on Monday. Jim Turner says that new employee probably won't be 4 minutes away and happy to pop in. No, they won't. No, they won't. But is that enough? Is that enough incentive? I would question that. Who knows? Who knows? Anyway, people, go and have your day, would you? And enjoy your weekend, particularly Gary, who's off on a date night. I'm off to spend some time with the family on Saturday afternoon. I think it's afternoon. Need to check with the social secretary on that, but we're all going out for dinner because we don't meet up that often. I'll be back on Monday. Till then, everybody, have a fine and splendid day. See you soon.